Welcome to the Nutri Health Podcast, where we provide credible, no-hype health, wellness, and nutrition information that actually moves the needle towards better long-term health. Hi there, I'm Dr. Erin Glenn, and this is episode 11 of the Nutri Health Podcast. Stay tuned if you want to learn about easy tweaks you can make in your daily routine that can have big impacts on your health, particularly blood sugar. Today, we're talking about how breaking up periods of sitting throughout the day with just a few minutes of movement can have big benefits, tips to optimize your sleep and lower stress for better metabolic control, and the best dietary supplements for blood sugar. If you're new here, I'd appreciate your support to hit that like and subscribe button to help my channel grow. In this episode, part of our metabolic health series, we're continuing our discussion of simple strategies to help manage blood sugar. Last episode, we reviewed 4 of the 7 tips to improve blood sugar control and a lot of terminology. So if you hear words today you're not familiar with, please check out episode 10 for more in-depth explanations. And if you're listening, please note I have video versions on YouTube, often with visual aids that can help in understanding some of these concepts. So check that out at Nutri Health on YouTube. This series is all about giving you simple tools you can start applying today to improve aspects of your metabolic health. Today, we're wrapping up blood sugar, and then we'll cover the remaining core areas of metabolic health: blood lipids, blood pressure, and body fat in the next 3 episodes. Here's a short recap of the 4 blood sugar tips we covered last episode. 1. We talked about ways to keep blood sugar levels more steady throughout the day, avoiding large spikes or steep drops in blood sugar. These fluctuations are called glycemic variability, and you can reduce how much blood sugar fluctuates by managing your carbohydrate intake, focusing on carbs from whole food sources like vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, and avoiding large amounts of simple sugars in a single sitting. Large fluctuations in blood sugar can cause symptoms like craving more sugar, hunger, irritability, and brain fog, making it harder for you to stick to your goals. Tip 2 is also good for reducing glycemic variability. The second tip had to do with the order in which you eat carbohydrates within a meal. You want to consume carbohydrates after first getting some fat, protein, and/or fiber in your stomach to slow carbohydrate digestion. This is going to slow the release of sugar from those carbohydrates into your bloodstream and reduce how high blood sugar peaks after a meal compared to if you had those same carbohydrates on an empty stomach or simultaneously with the other foods. Starting your meal with a salad or a serving of vegetables with healthy fat like olive oil or avocado is a great way to achieve this. 3. What you eat at your first meal of the day affects your blood sugar and insulin responses to the next meal. This is called the second meal effect, and research shows when the first meal consumed is higher in fiber, protein, and/or healthy fats and lower in sugar, insulin and blood sugar responses to the second meal are better. In short, whenever you eat your first meal of the day, aim to get plenty of protein, fiber, and some healthy fat in there to set yourself up for better blood sugar control the rest of the day. That means swapping a sugary breakfast option like cereal or baked goods for something like eggs with veggies or Greek yogurt with berries and nuts. And the 4th tip we covered last episode had to do with circadian rhythms. Many metabolic processes like digestion, hormone production and release, body temperature, and sleep-wake cycles follow 24-hour patterns, what we call a circadian rhythm. What does this have to do with blood sugar? We know how the body responds to carbohydrates is generally better earlier in the day, and it worsens from early afternoon onwards towards bedtime. Taking into account the second meal effect we just mentioned in tip 3, eating a healthy breakfast that includes protein, healthy fats, and fiber sets your body up to be able to handle your next meal better. So I suggest having your second meal of the day by 1 or 2 p.m. at the latest, and having that meal be the most carb-heavy of the day. I'm not saying eat a huge amount of carbs at this meal, but in relation to your other meals, this second meal seems to be the best to handle additional carbohydrates based on the second meal effects and taking into account circadian rhythms. Aim to eat your food in fewer hours of the day, shortening how many hours you're consuming food each day. The typical American consumes food for about 13 to 15 hours per day, and you want that to be more in the 8 to 12 hour range. Lastly, try to consume your last calories at least 3 hours before bed to give your body time to digest that food before sleep, keeping in mind your body is least sensitive to insulin later at night. We covered those first 4 in more detail in the previous episode. Today, we're looking at the last 3 tips for improving blood sugar control. We'll talk about how contracting muscle helps lower blood sugar levels, how stress and sleep contribute to glucose control and how to improve in these areas, and how you can incorporate dietary supplements for blood sugar support. All right, let's jump back in with number 5. Action 5 is all about using movement to help control blood sugar. I don't want to scare anyone off with the term movement. I'm not about to tell you to add a ton of exercise every day, though of course, exercise has a wide variety of benefits for health. Instead, I want to talk about how strategically placing movement as simple as walking, calf raises, air squats, or dancing around can have dramatic impacts on blood sugar. Why is this the case? Skeletal muscle is responsible for removing about 75% of the sugar from our blood after a meal. When you eat a meal with carbohydrates, those get broken down into glucose, which circulates in the blood as blood sugar. Your muscles are going to capture about 75% of that sugar and either use it to fuel muscle contraction or store it as glycogen for energy later. So you can see why muscle is really important for blood sugar control. If you're not moving your muscles often or you don't have much muscle mass, you're not optimizing how your body processes carbohydrates after a meal. Your muscles have to either use the sugar for energy or store it later as glycogen, but it has a max on how much it can store for later. It's not unlimited storage. If your glycogen storage is full and your muscles aren't moving, where does that blood sugar go? Some of it goes to the liver, which can do the same thing. It can either use it for energy or store some for later, but the liver also has a limit on how much glycogen it can store for later use. Ultimately, if you eat too many carbohydrates, you're not moving your muscles and your glycogen storage in muscle and liver are full, that extra blood sugar gets stored as fat. And unlike the limited storage capacity for glycogen we have in muscle and liver, we have a pretty much unlimited capacity to store fat. So, back to the action. Move your muscles often throughout the day to lower blood sugar. This can be as simple as going for a walk around the block, marching in place 5 to 10 minutes while you watch something, doing a few minutes of calf raises where you raise up on your tiptoes and contract your calf muscles, chair sits, or air squats. Just moving your body, even at a low intensity, is going to help move a significant amount of that sugar out of your blood and into your cells, lowering blood sugar levels, particularly after a meal. We've mainly talked about this movement being after a meal, which is important because those are the main times of day we have increased blood sugar. But we really want to move more all day, not just after meals. There was a new term coined around 2014, I believe, called exercise snacks. The idea of breaking up sedentary behavior with short bouts of activity. And since then, many studies have shown dramatic benefits for this strategy. Even if you exercise in a structured way, such as an hour of training at the gym, if you're sedentary the rest of the day, you're going to lose many of the metabolic health benefits from that exercise session because being sedentary, getting less than about 7,000 steps per day, is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, and risk of death, even if you get some exercise, but then sit or lie around the rest of the day. We have to move more throughout the day. If you need to, set a vibration alarm or a setting on your watch that reminds you to stand up and just march in place every 30 to 60 minutes. This small act will have massive impact on your metabolic health. And here's some cool info. There was a study that showed walking just 3 minutes every 45 minutes improved glucose control better than a single bout of 30 minutes of walking. So if you don't feel like you have 30 plus minutes to get out and walk, just standing up from your desk and marching in place for 3 minutes at a time throughout the day can actually have better benefits for blood sugar control. This action is especially important for people with insulin resistance, whether you have PCOS, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, or cardiovascular disease. If your cells are resistant to the effects of insulin, it's harder for you to get that sugar out of your bloodstream after a meal. What's really awesome about movement is that contracting your muscles can get sugar out of your blood independent of insulin. So even if you're insulin resistant, this tip is going to work for you. And the more movement you do, the higher intensity the movement, the more it will lower blood sugar. So moving 5 or 10 minutes after a meal is a great start, but working up to either a longer time or a higher intensity is even better, especially if you need help with lowering blood sugar levels. As far as when to do this after your meal, starting that movement anywhere from about 10 to 30 minutes after you eat is good. We'll talk more in the upcoming episodes about why it's really important to break up sedentary time throughout your day for overall metabolic health. But for blood sugar control, the reason moving your muscles is critical is because it keeps these little channels that transport sugar into the cells at the cell membrane waiting for glucose to come in. Contracting your muscles helps keep those transporters at the ready, again, independent of whether your insulin is working well or not. So this is a great way to ensure you can keep blood sugar under control throughout the day. Aim to move your muscles for a few minutes every hour. Every 30 minutes would be even better, but anything where you move is going to be better than sitting or standing still. And please note, standing alone doesn't count. There has to be some movement, some contraction of the muscles. Of course, more strenuous exercise is also great for these same reasons. It uses up a lot of sugar and it helps keep those glucose transporters at the cell membrane for an extended period of time, which is going to help with blood sugar control even after you stop exercise. It's just one of the many reasons both aerobic and resistance exercise are beneficial for metabolic health. But for today's tips, I promised to keep it simple. So the simplest thing you can do in terms of movement to improve blood sugar control is to break up periods of being sedentary with more small bouts of movement throughout your day, and especially try to move for a few minutes after meals. One last quick note here. If you're taking insulin for your diabetes or other medications, make sure you communicate any lifestyle changes like this with your doctor because it can affect your medication dosages. You don't want blood sugar to drop too low. Okay, moving on to action 6. Optimize sleep and reduce stress. I realize as I say this, that is so much easier said than done. What I hope you take away from this section today are basic sleep hygiene and stress reduction tools that you may have heard of before but aren't doing in practice. This is one of those topics that most of us know what we should and shouldn't be doing for better sleep and less stress, but we don't always do them. I hope you take these tips today, whether you've heard them before or not, and actually put them into practice because improving sleep and reducing stress can have significant impacts, not just on your metabolic health, but on your overall long-term health. Let's start with sleep. We know that not getting enough sleep is linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease and stroke, depression, and increased risk of death, not to mention its effects on brain function and generally how you feel. How much sleep is enough? Between 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night is optimal for most. Sleeping less than 7 hours regularly can increase the likelihood of insulin resistance and diabetes. It's also been shown to increase risk of obesity because lack of sleep increases hunger hormones, cravings, and can make you less sensitive to the effects of insulin. There are numerous scientific studies that have shown this in various ways, but one I find really interesting was done in young, healthy people. They only restricted their sleep for 3 consecutive nights and only for an average of about 1.5 hours less sleep per night. But even that small amount less for 3 days made healthy young people insulin resistant. So we have these studies that show even mild sleep deprivation can make you insulin resistant the following day. It can increase your hunger hormones and cravings. And we sure as heck know it affects mood. So you wake up cranky, hungry, craving bad food, and then your body is going to respond worse to that food than if you'd had adequate sleep. This is why it's important to prioritize your sleep. I know it's hard. I know there's never enough time in the day and you have obligations and things you have to do. But even just incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine can start to improve your sleep. And a rising tide raises all boats, right? As you start to get better sleep, you start to feel better. Your brain works better. You have more energy. Your metabolism is working better. So I ask you to consider some of these basic sleep hygiene habits if you're not already doing them. I'm just going to run through a list of my top 10 things you can do for better sleep. Of course, sleep is complicated and everyone is different, but these are some of the most scientifically backed ways to get better sleep. 1. Avoid bright lights in the hours before bed and eliminate as much light as possible in your sleeping area. We can include screens here as light. You really want to shut off screens from TVs, tablets, phones, at least an hour before bed, and dim lights around your house a few hours before bed. In your sleeping area, if you can completely block lights from the outside, from clocks, from any electronic or light source in your room, do it. If you can't, consider a sleep mask. Even dim light can disrupt sleep. 2, make it cool if you can. Sleeping in a temperature range between about 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit is optimal. 3, go to bed and wake up at about the same times every day, including weekends. Some say plus or minus 30 to 60 minutes on either end is okay, but keeping to a consistent sleep schedule will help keep your circadian rhythms in sync. 4, don't drink caffeine past about 2 p.m. Some people are fast metabolizers of caffeine, others are slow. The half-life is about 5 hours, meaning if you consume 80 milligrams of caffeine at noon, 5 hours later, about half of that, 40 milligrams, is still in your system. So particularly if you struggle with sleep, don't consume caffeine in the afternoon. If you hit an afternoon slump, do something like a brisk walk or a few minutes of strenuous activity to increase blood flow to the brain. 5, control noise when you can. If there are noises in your sleeping environment you can't control, like from the street or neighbors, try a sound machine and or earplugs if the noises are waking you up while you sleep. I understand there are circumstances you need to be able to hear noises, but if you don't have that necessity and external noises wake you up, try a solution to reduce them. This includes notifications on your phone. Set your phone to silent, or you can have calls from certain people to come through in your settings if they call twice within a short time frame. Tell people closest to you about this setting so they know to call twice in case of an emergency. But you want to not be awakened by notifications on your phone. 6, avoid alcohol before bed. There's plenty of health reasons to cut back or avoid alcohol altogether, but studies show just 1 drink for women, 2 drinks for men can decrease sleep quality by about 10%, and that number increases the more you drink. You may feel like it helps you sleep, but it disrupts later stages of sleep that are important for the restorative benefits. 7, napping, yes or no? Some people are nap people, others aren't. What the science seems to say about naps is a 20-minute snooze between about 1 to 3 p.m. is fine and can boost productivity, but keep it short and don't nap later in the afternoon past 3 p.m. 8, use sunlight to set circadian rhythms. There's been a lot of hype around this topic in the last few years, but the science is pretty clear. Getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning and evening helps set your internal clocks. Never stare directly at the sun, but looking in the direction of the sun for a few minutes in the early part of the morning and near sunset can help reset your clocks if you feel like you aren't tired at night or are too tired when you wake up. If you need to choose between morning or evening, I would prioritize getting the morning sunlight. 9, have a bedroom routine. Just like it's good for kids, it can be good for adults too. Having a relaxing routine before bed, such as reading, taking a warm bath or shower, doing some light stretching, journaling, this can all train your brain that it's time for sleep. Doing similar things every night in the 30 to 60 minutes for bed can also help turn off racing thoughts as you lay down for sleep. And the last one, number 10, will probably be the hardest for a lot of people. It has to do with partners, kids, and or pets. You know if one or more of these things is impacting your sleep. Maybe your partner snores or tosses and turns. Maybe your child sleeps in the bed with you and kicks you in the head multiple times. Maybe your dog takes up the whole bed. You've got to give some serious thought to how you can adjust your situation for better sleep. There are more and more people now who are getting what's called sleep divorce, sleeping separately from their partner, and that's okay. Sleep is so important. You both deserve good sleep. You deserve good sleep even if you have kids. Have an honest conversation with your partner or your kids about why you want to try a different arrangement. It might be a challenge at first, and maybe it's not possible right now, but you won't know if you don't try. And it's important enough to continue to try different solutions until you find one that works for everyone. 35 to 40% of US adults aren't getting adequate sleep. That's huge. If you're struggling with your metabolic health, aiming for at least 7 hours of quality sleep each night is important, and you can incorporate as many of those 10 tips I just shared to help get you there. Now, sleep was just one part of Action 6, the other being to manage stress. You've probably heard chronic stress can cause weight gain, and there's certainly some truth to that, but it's not a direct cause and effect. Cortisol is a hormone that's released in response to acute stress to help you mobilize energy and be ready to fight the stressor. It's also just a part of everyday life. Our cortisol levels naturally increase in the morning and taper off throughout the day in a circadian rhythm. But when we have chronic long-term stress, cortisol can stay elevated when it's not supposed to be. This influences glucose metabolism by telling the liver to make more glucose, inhibiting our muscles from taking up that glucose, which you remember from earlier is such a huge part of getting sugar out of the blood. Chronically high cortisol suppresses insulin secretion and ultimately leads to insulin resistance and inflammation, two things that cause the development of type 2 diabetes. So, aside from stress contributing to other mental and metabolic health effects like high blood pressure, it can also affect blood sugar metabolism. How can you reduce chronic stress? Like sleep, this is a tough one. We all have different and varying causes and levels of stress in life. The tools I provide here are meant to help you deal with stress somewhat in the moment in order to hopefully reduce your chronic stress level over time. However, it's important for you to try to identify major sources of stress in your life and consider ways to reduce that stress long term. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's stress you put on yourself that you could back off of. In any case, these 8 tips aren't going to remove stress from your life, but I hope they can start to lower your overall level of stress and put you in a better place to make changes where you need to. First, the physiological sigh. I've actually done this most of my life, I guess just instinctively. There are 2 ways you can do this technique. You can either take 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth like this. Or you can take a deep inhale through the nose, and then when you think you're about to need to exhale, take another quick inhale to try to max out the inhale, then slowly exhale through your mouth like this. Either way, you're increasing oxygen levels and releasing carbon dioxide, which helps regulate the autonomic nervous system and induce relaxation through the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the opposing system to the fight or flight system. Second is a technique called box breathing. This is a breathing exercise where you inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold there for 4 seconds, exhale through the mouth for 4 seconds, then hold for 4 seconds, and repeat this for about 3 to 5 minutes. You can increase the time of each step from 4 seconds up to 5 or 6 seconds if that's more comfortable for you. Box breathing promotes relaxation by slowing down the breath and activating the parasympathetic nervous system, that opposing system of the sympathetic fight or flight system. Third is another breathing technique, a simple form of slow, deep breathing. Simply by making your exhale longer than your inhale as you take deep breaths, you can engage the parasympathetic nervous system and stimulate the vagus nerve, which in turn slows heart rate and lowers blood pressure. An example would be taking an inhale for 4 seconds and then exhaling slowly for 6 to 8 seconds. Fourth, you can try progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR. This is a technique often used in yoga towards the end of class. And for this approach, you can sit or lie on your back, and you're going to tense a specific muscle group or area, like your fists, for a few seconds, and then relax them completely. You do this moving through different muscle groups and areas of your body from head to toe. This method increases body awareness and helps release areas of physical tension. It's also been shown to decrease cortisol levels. You can search progressive muscle relaxation on YouTube for some guided options. Number 5 is to get outside. Just 5 to 10 minutes outdoors, ideally in a natural environment with some grass, trees, water, some kind of nature around, has been shown to lower cortisol levels and reduce blood pressure. Nature has a calming effect on us, and if you're able to remove your shoes and be in direct contact with the ground, even better. Both physical activity and sunlight can release endorphins. Speaking of endorphins, number 6 is laughter and smiling. Engaging in something that makes you laugh or smile genuinely promotes the release of endorphins, which will improve mood and reduce stress. Something like watching a short, funny video or talking to a friend that makes you smile or laugh will also activate the parasympathetic nervous system and lower heart rate, helping to shift your body out of stress mode. 7. Humming or chanting, as can be observed in yoga where practitioners chant the word Om, has been shown to activate the vagus nerve, which we already mentioned a few times here, as an important part of the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. This can help lower your heart rate, blood pressure, and cortisol levels, creating a calming effect and easing the physiological symptoms of acute stress. So those first 7 are all somewhat relaxing, right? We've got breathing, muscle relaxation, getting outside, humming or chanting. Number 8 is the opposite. Tip 8 is to get some cold exposure. A quick cold shower or cold plunge can release endorphins and dopamine, which can lead to a happy feeling afterwards. You certainly won't feel super happy while in the cold, but many people are energized by the feelings they experience after this cold exposure. You can start simple by cranking your shower to cold for as little as 30 seconds at the end of your shower, mainly keeping the water hitting the top of your head, the back of your neck, and your upper back, and then work your way up to longer cold exposures. Andrew Huberman and many others have cold exposure protocols you can find online, but please note there are contraindications for cold exposure and not everyone should attempt it without medical supervision, including but not limited to people with cardiovascular disease, because this approach causes constriction of the blood vessels. People with Raynaud's disease, hypothyroidism, asthma, neuropathy, any conditions like this, or really any medical condition at all, it's best to discuss these types of lifestyle changes with your doctor, and that goes for all of the strategies we cover in these episodes. All right, that wraps up Action 6 to improve blood sugar control by optimizing sleep and reducing stress. I hope you have some new tools there you can start trying to improve your sleep and reduce stress for better metabolic control. The last item I want to cover for better blood sugar control is your dietary supplement options. Personally, I'm a supporter and consumer of dietary supplements. I spent the last decade of my career developing dietary supplements for supplement companies. And if you're able to find trusted companies with high quality and transparency in their active levels of ingredients, supplements can be a great tool to support a variety of health areas, including blood sugar. You should always discuss these with your doctor, especially if you're on medication, because some of these are quite powerful. They can affect dosages of medications, and that is really something that your healthcare provider needs to be involved with. Here are my top recommendations for supplements to support healthy blood sugar levels. Number one is soluble fiber. Now, fiber, of course, is also found in healthy food options like vegetables, whole grains, fruits, but we know about 95% of men and about 91% of women are not getting the recommended amount of daily fiber, which is 25 grams per day for women, 38 grams per day for men. So, I'm not opposed to supplementing fiber to help boost people towards those amounts. Viscous soluble fiber, the kind that dissolves in water and forms a gel-like substance, is the type we want because that's going to help slow the rise in blood sugar from a meal. I'm not going to recommend a specific brand here, but you want to look for at least 3, preferably 4 or more grams of soluble fiber per serving, and you want to take that fiber a few minutes before or at the start of a meal. That goes back to what we talked about last episode about getting some protein, healthy fat, and/or fiber before a meal to help slow the rate of digestion and slow the blood sugar spike. This is one supplement that can help if you don't always want to eat vegetables or get protein or healthy fat at the start of the meal. And it's got a pretty good safety margin because, it's fiber. If you find soluble fiber supplements cause digestive upset, you can always start with a lower amount and slowly work your way up towards the 4 grams or so before a meal. On the fiber train, I also like resistant starch, which is a prebiotic fiber that resists digestion and largely makes it through the digestive tract to feed beneficial gut bacteria. One of the drawbacks of resistant starch is the dosages for benefits tend to be higher, around 15 to 30 grams per day, but this is a natural type of fiber found in green bananas and potato starch. So aside from the potential digestive discomfort that can occur as you adjust to more fiber, this is a pretty safe option as well. It's been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and reduce glucose spikes after a meal by slowing glucose absorption when taken before or with a meal. The third supplement I like for blood sugar is a water extract of mulberry leaf. This works by blocking enzymes that break down sugar and carbohydrates in the digestive tract, so it can both slow the rise in blood sugar as well as block some of the sugar from being absorbed. There's data to support it can also be beneficial for the gut bacteria, and it's on the safer side in terms of side effects, medication interactions, and the fact that it won't cause your blood sugar to drop too low if you take it and don't consume carbohydrates at the same time. So pretty safe in terms of the ingredient and its overall effects. I'll put a link in the show notes where you can learn more about mulberry leaf extract if you're interested in this one. My final recommendation to consider is berberine, but this is not for everyone. If you're on any medication for blood sugar or otherwise, talk to your doctor as there's risk for drug interactions with berberine. This is a compound found in several different plants, but it's isolated and sold as a dietary supplement to manage blood sugar, and it can also help with cholesterol levels as well. I'm not going to give any specific dosages here because different products can vary in how well they're absorbed. I can't give a generic 500 milligram recommendation since some products may have other ingredients that enhance absorption, and therefore you might need to take less of that one for similar efficacy as one that doesn't enhance absorption. What I will say is that berberine is not highly bioavailable, so you can look for products with ingredients that help with absorption, such as a phytosome formulation, phospholipid, or black pepper extracts. You'll want to follow the manufacturer's instruction for dosage, but consider starting with a lower dosage or on the low end of what they recommend to see how you handle it first. And never consume berberine without a meal containing carbohydrates. Doing so can make your blood sugar drop too low, so you need to be careful with this one. You may have heard of many other options for improving blood sugar, like drinking apple cider vinegar before meals, Ceylon cinnamon, chromium picolinate, alpha-lipoic acid. While those may have some application, the 4 I mention are my top picks and ones I think most people can safely add to their routine that are going to have the overall strongest benefits for blood sugar and overall health. But please note those caveats I mentioned for berberine as well. In sum, one of the most important things you can do for your health, even if you don't do structured exercise, is just to move more. Break up periods of sitting with movement like walking, marching in place, air squats, or calf raises to drastically improve metabolic health and lower your risk of chronic diseases. It's that simple. Prioritizing getting at least 7 hours of sleep per night, practicing good sleep hygiene habits, and using tools to lower stress will benefit your blood sugar control and overall metabolic health in big ways. And if you still need help with blood sugar control, work with a healthcare professional to see if any of the supplement options I mentioned might be right for you. I hope you learned something new and you have some new ideas to try out for better metabolic health. Please leave any questions or comments you have about this episode in the comment section of our YouTube channel. You can find us at Nuchi Health, that's NUCHI Health, there and on all social platforms. And if you learned something helpful or enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on our social accounts, and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Those interactions help us grow and help us make a bigger impact. I've also linked my Ko-fi page in the show notes where you can make a contribution to the show if you'd like to support us in that way. Thank you for being here, for your desire to learn and improve your health, and for letting us be part of your health journey. I'll see you soon.